Hi everybody. In this video, we will be creating a simple sample web page. Actually, I should say it will be a series of videos because it's going to take me a little bit to go over everything on this page. We are, after all, covering important concepts from chapter 1 and chapter 2 in the textbook. By design, I also am limited to 10-minute videos with this tool that I am using, Screencastify, but that's okay. It's good to break this up into bite-sized chunks, if you will. Let's start with Blackboard. If you go to Modules, and then Module 1, there is a Week 1 folder where you will find information about Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and a video on how to create a zip file. You will want to know how to create a zip file because most, if not all of your assignments in this class will have to be turned in as a zip file. Inside Chapter 1, I provide additional resources for you to review, and then there is a PDF of information from a particular chapter, along with additional related information. In this case, HTML Basics is Chapter 1. And then Chapter 2, I also have a PDF called Chapter 2 Text PDF. Let's start with the HTML Basics PDF from Chapter 1. The first main slide offers a question. What is HTML? To break it down, here it is right here. Hypertext Markup Language. We are indeed learning a programming language that is used for creating web pages. And just like any other language that you've had to learn, there's syntax and different rules that you just have to familiarize yourself with. And that's what we're going to do with HTML. The hypertext portion of this, well, that's how we experience the World Wide Web. When you visit a website, you can click on a link, a hypertext, and that will either take you to a different spot on the same page, or it might take you to a different page altogether. That's the hypertext portion of this HTML acronym. And then the markup part, well, once we get into learning HTML, you will find that it is made up of different elements. And these elements, in turn, have an opening tag, content, and then a closing tag. And these tags, the opening and closing tag, they mark up text and graphics. By marking up text and graphics, web browsers will have an idea of how to display a page. Now, all this might make more sense once we start digging into actually creating our HTML page. Right now, I'm just talking about it. Now, before we can get started with actually creating our first web page in this class, let me scroll down to this right here. Another question. What do I use to create web pages? Excellent question, right? For this class, all you really need is a plain text editor. And depending on what computer you have, you probably already have it. If you have a Windows or a PC, a Windows computer or a PC, then you can use Notepad. If you have a Mac, then you probably already have Text Edit. Now, if you don't want to use these two defaults, you could also use Text Wrangler There's brackets, which will work for a PC or a Mac. Text Wrangler works for a Mac. There's Notepad++, which I would recommend if you're on a PC. For this video, I will be using Adobe Dreamweaver, so you could use that also. And we're not doing this in this class, but if you've had experience or if you know of people that do this for a living, they probably use some type of content management system to manage a website. So the more common ones, the most popular ones, we have WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. There's also Wix, you can call that a CMS. There's Google Sites, Weebly, Squarespace. The list goes on. But for this class, you can just use a plain text editor or Adobe Dreamweaver if you have that. Okay, with that said, let's go to your computer and create a new folder. And this new folder, call it lab-1b, because this is lab 1b. You'll notice that I made everything lowercase and I did not use any spaces or special characters except for this dash right here. When it comes to web files and file names, letter case matters. For example, lab-1b with a capital L and a capital B, when both these folders are on a web server, they're considered different. So that's something to remember as you're working on web files. And then also you don't want any kind of special characters except for dashes or underscores. So we could do lab_1b. But in this case, we'll stick with lab-1b. Okay, and then attached to lab1b is a web.jpg file. Go ahead and place that in this lab-1b folder. Okay, once you have that set up, we're ready to create the HTML structure. In this screen, you will find the minimum code that every web page should have. It goes from a doc type declaration all the way to a closing HTML tag. So we'll start with that. Open your plain text editor, start a new document, file new, and type this information in. I'll start with doc type HTML. So that's a less than sign, exclamation point, doc type, space, HTML, and then a greater than sign. This declaration right here tells your web browser which version of HTML it's using. In this case, when you keep it simple, just doc type HTML, the web browser knows that we are using HTML5. Next is an opening HTML tag. And then here's the closing HTML tag right there. So as you're getting used to working with code, this is another important concept that you want to remember. Most tags, if there is an opening tag, then there will probably be a closing tag associated with that. There's only a handful of tags in HTML that do not have a closing tag.